The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
Hello. It is the calm before the free agency storm. My name is Adrian Benjamins, and I'm here with Neal Rochlani. Neal, how are you, man?
I am glad to be back on with you. Holiday weekend coming up.
Me too. It's
so much
been a long
speculation in the NBA. Yeah. The season never ends. The 365-day calendar of the NBA season just keeps on chugging.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Neal, because I say all the time on this show that we have the greatest sports league, because it never ends. It's like we had the playoffs, then the finals, then the NBA draft. Now we have free agency. Then we're going to have summer league. And then we're going to, dive right into preseason. It's like never ending, and I love it. It's just the greatest, man. So, Neal, we got to talk about – wait, before we get started, this is a Hoop Ball presentation. You're listening to Fantasy NBA Today. Hit Neal and I up on Twitter. I'm at Adrian Benjamins. Neal, you can hit him up at Ball with Neal. Neal, we gotta talk about free agency. I know you're probably tired of talking about it. It's all I hear every single day, but we gotta talk about it. We're one day away from free agency. How can we not start with LeBron James? Neal, what are your thoughts? Where's LeBron going? If you had to bet, you had to put all your money down, where's LeBron going, Neal?
I mean, he's going to be with sunshine and movie stars. He's going to be out in L.A. I think he's going to be joining you. I mean, you may want to both you and Dan are out there, right? You guys are going to have LeBron as your neighbor.
Man, okay, so, Neal, you might be surprised to hear this. I'm a little torn about LeBron coming here, and I'm probably in the 1% minority here that feels this way, but we got to gut the entire young core. We got to get rid of everybody. Brandon Ingram, Kyle Kuzma, Julius Randle, Lonzo Ball, all these guys might have to go for us to make a move to get Kawhi Leonard, which would likely bring LeBron here. And, Neal, let me ask you, would a team with Kawhi Leonard, LeBron James, and a bunch of veteran minimum salaries, would that team be good enough to beat Golden State?
Probably not. I mean, I envision them. You talk about having to gut your roster, LA's having to gut their roster. I don't know how much they'll have left. I don't know, salary net needs when you trade and how that all works out in terms of contracts and how much over the cap you can go and all that. But I would think they'd want to keep at least a couple of their young guys, core guys, like maybe Josh Hart can stay. I was hoping to keep Kuzma, but he's probably a pretty big trade piece if they do move Kawhi to Los Angeles. And I'd like to see them keep at least two of those three. I mean, Lonzo Ball I actually don't think is going to be around if LeBron comes. I don't think LeBron wants a distraction, off-court distraction. He's redundant. LeBron is a great passer. LeBron needs to be surrounded by good shooters, which Lonzo, unfortunately, that's his one weakness. So I'm okay with him leaving. I'm okay with maybe another young player leaving. But if they do lose 4 or 5, yes, it's going to be really challenging for them to compete against Golden State or even Houston for that matter.
So this is my problem, Neal, is that you yourself just said you don't think a team with Kawhi, LeBron, and a bunch of veteran minimum guys could beat Golden State. And this is my problem, is that Golden State is likely going to be dominant for, the next 2, 3, 4 seasons? So the Lakers right now have a young core that 4 seasons from now are going to be in their prime. Why not just build on that? You know what I mean? So I would rather let's just grow and set up this young team to take over as the next team after Golden State has had their run. And so I'm kind of more in that boat. But look, I guess if you can become a title contender right away, most people believe you do what you have to do to make that happen. If they can also add a guy like Paul George, which is a big if, now I can get on board with that. Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, LeBron James with some minimum salary guys. That team, I think, could possibly contend with Golden State. But I think Paul George coming to the Lakers is a big if. All signs, all the buzz from his camp is that staying in OKC is a strong possibility. So I don't know, Neal. I just am really torn, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in not only the next day or so, but just I'm real curious to see if something goes down later this afternoon. We're recording this Friday morning. It's about 8 a.m. Pacific time, and I'm curious if we're going to get some Woj bombs later this afternoon. So, Neal, this is a fantasy show. So, from a fantasy perspective, does the fantasy value for Kawhi Leonard or LeBron James change if they come to a team like the Lakers?
Yeah, so let's go on the presumption they're both there, LeBron and Kawhi, and we don't really know who's around them yet. So LeBron had an amazing season last year in terms of fantasy stats. Played 82 games. In the ACAT League, I believe he was the top 4 or 5 player, if not higher. I think he's going to go down a little bit. I don't think he's going to play all 82 games. I don't think he's going to play that many minutes. So I'd say his stats go down a little bit, but he has really been working on his efficiency, and I think his free throw shooting improved last year, and I think that will continue to be where it was last year, maybe even improve. So I think he's still going to be. I mean, he had kind of dropped to like the end of the first round. I had saw like last year. And I think he might be a mid-first rounder this year. As far as Kawhi, that one's much more of a wild card because I don't know his injury. You know, how serious was his injury? Was it really serious in the sense that he may not come back fully recovered, like 100%, maybe he's 95%, or is it more just he was resting because he didn't want to be there anymore? And there are other off-court issues that we weren't aware of. So, you know, my likelihood is to put him back at his stat category the prior year and just kind of use that as my baseline and then maybe slightly tweak it depending on who's on the roster. But I see both of them being like mid to late first round values. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I agree. I don't see LeBron's value changing much. Still going to be the alpha if he comes to the Lakers. Still going to be probably the primary ball handler. Going to be dependent on to do everything. So I don't see his value changing much. Had a career year last year. I think if anything, probably upped his fantasy value for the next season because he played every single game. One of the reasons why I was fading him is because I was scared of his free throw shooting. I believe he brought that up significantly. So I think LeBron, all thumbs up for him in Los Angeles. Kawhi Leonard, as you said, for me, is probably a no-go only because his injury scares me, man. We just don't know what's going on. You kind of want and have to think he'll be ready for the start of the season because most people were surprised that he sat the end of last season. So you have to think all summer off, he should be 100% ready to go, but we just don't know. That injury, I've heard some strange things about that injury, that it could be something that he deals with for the rest of his career. So I'm just, Neal, especially this early when you're drafting, I hate taking risks like that. So I'll likely fade Kawhi Leonard no matter what. I mean, he would probably have to slip to like round 4 or 5 for me to look at him, and guaranteed somebody's going to take him probably in like the end of round 2 or round 3 at the latest, and more than likely I'll be looking elsewhere.
Wait, can I interject for a second? I did get a tweet yesterday from a gentleman. I'm going to try to pronounce his name, but I may butcher it. His first name is Richard, which I can do that pretty well. Last name is Semper Tegi, maybe. I apologize. Anyway, he's a Spurs fan, and he says Kawhi is going to stick around for one more year in San Antonio, at least. Do you believe that? And how likely do you think that is true?
So I don't believe that. And okay, so I've heard that Coach Popovich has had multiple meetings with Kawhi Leonard. One of them was in San Diego, I believe, a few weeks ago. None of these meetings has gone well from what I hear. That Kawhi was adamant about wanting out. Kawhi is mad that he believes that the Spurs mishandled his injury. He believes... Oh, he's also upset that a number of Spurs veteran players, Tony Parker, I believe Manu Ginobili, a lot of these guys came out and said they were not happy with Kawhi Leonard. Tony Parker himself said that, the injury that I'm playing through is worse than the injury that Kawhi Leonard has. So I don't think Kawhi wants to be there. I think Kawhi's camp as well is pushing for him to make a move to Los Angeles. Not only is it his hometown, but it's also a big market for him to expand his brand. So I think that Kawhi, he really wants to go to LA. A lot of buzz that we heard yesterday was that the Spurs are ready to move on from Kawhi. Now, let me run this by you, Neal. If the Spurs received a Godfather type offer from the Lakers, meaning I'm thinking in my head this is Kyle Kuzma, Brandon Ingram, first round draft pick, something like that. How amazing would the Spurs be? Dejounte Murray. They drafted a high upside athletic to a wing player in Lonnie Walker. Now you're adding Brandon Ingram, Kyle Kuzma. You got LaMarcus Aldridge still there. That's an amazing team right there. I'm not saying that that team can contend for a title. They would still be very young and need a lot of experience, but a very fun team. If I'm a San Antonio Spurs fan, I'm okay with that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, a couple of things I want to touch on there. Yeah, one, I agree with you. I think it's more likely than not that Kawhi is gone. I hope for the Spurs fans they get to see him play another year, but like you said, what I've heard is that he really does not want to be there. And San Antonio is a smart organization. They'll figure it out with this trading. They're not just going to give up Kawhi without getting some great assets in return. They will be a playoff team, I think, again next year. Pop will find a way to get the right players and be able to develop them, and they will be, in the high 40s, low 50s in terms of wins, I expect. And going forward, they might be set up. They may actually, I don't want to say they'll win this trade because it's really hard to win a trade when you give up a superstar, but they'll probably do as well as you can. So I'm with you. I think they'll get a good core. I don't know what Popovich's terms in terms of his long-term plans on coaching, but if he's there for the next 5 years, I think he could develop these young guys into some really strong NBA players.
So we just talked about how we were worried about Kawhi's health. Let's say Kawhi's health is a major issue and the Spurs become this powerhouse young team. We could be looking back at this trade a year or two from now and saying that the Spurs killed it and made out like bandits in this deal. So, I don't know, Neal. I think this trade just makes a lot of sense for for both sides, I guess, the Lakers and for the Spurs. Let's get this done. Let's make this happen. Neal, let's talk a little bit more about some of these other guys. Is there anyone else that you might want to touch on? I know we kind of talked a little bit about Paul George, Chris Paul, Clint Capella are some big names. Zach LaVine, Julius Randle, DeMarcus Cousins. Any other guys that you got feelings about for free agency?
Yeah, let's mention one other one that I talked about with Dan the other day, which was, so I am under the conspiracy theory that he and LeBron James and Chris Paul are talking, and they are going to play somewhere together next year. Dan thought that was not as crazy of an idea and thought perhaps that was true as well. Do you think that is possible at all?
So I'm really glad that you mentioned that, Neal, because We just heard this morning that LeBron James opted out of his contract. Somehow that means that the Houston Rockets are kind of out of the mix, because I guess for LeBron to join the Rockets, he would need to opt in, and then they would have had to do some kind of a trade deal to make that happen. So him opting out means that it's likely more the Lakers, the Sixers, something like that. So I kind of agree with you that, Chris Paul's a free agent. So why couldn't Chris Paul join LeBron in LA or somewhere? So I think that's a real possibility. But here's the thing. I do believe that when Chris Paul made the decision to join the Rockets, that he kind of looked at that as a long-term choice, that he saw himself there for a number of seasons. So I would still bet that the likelihood is that Chris Paul stays put. Look at the Rockets were the number one team in the NBA this season. If Chris Paul was healthy for the final 2 games of that Golden State series, the Rockets may have been in the finals, not the Warriors. So I still think my number one bet is for Chris Paul to stay in Houston, but it would not shock me at all if Chris Paul decided to join LeBron somewhere. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I just saw the news too. I wasn't on Twitter until you just mentioned that he opted out. That just happened, I guess, not too long ago. So, yeah, I guess it's less likely that now he's not going to Houston for sure. So it would have to be Los Angeles if they both go there. I don't think Chris Paul is going to Cleveland, nor are those 2 guys going to Philly. So it's looking less and less likely that my conspiracy theory is going to play out, which is odd because usually conspiracy theories are always true. So anyway, we can move on then because I've got nothing else on free agency. I don't know about the rest. Like DeMarcus Cousins, I don't even know who wants him and how bad his injury is, how he's going to be coming off that. The other one that was kind of confusing to me was DeAndre Jordan going to the Mavericks again for the second time, maybe really happening this time. Do you think that's is that just all like smoke and mirrors, or is that real?
No, I think it's real. I think that the Mavs, in this draft, they went with Luka Doncic instead of going with there was a lot of buzz that they were going to take a big like Mo Bamba or Jaren Jackson Jr. So for them to move up and get Luka Doncic, they got a real hole in that front court. So, there's also been buzz that they're interested in DeMarcus Cousins, but I think DeAndre Jordan makes a lot of sense. And I think the Clippers, I was shocked that the Clippers didn't move DeAndre Jordan at the trade deadline last season. So I think it makes a lot of sense for a deal to get done here. And if anything, I'm just kind of more surprised that after DeAndre Jordan kind of reneged on his promise to go there, that they still want him. Like usually you would kind of have a bad taste in your mouth from that whole experience. So I'm just surprised that Dallas is still okay with bringing him there. But I think he makes a lot of sense, and he would be a good fit there next to Dennis Smith Jr. and Doncic and Harrison Barnes. And so, yeah, I think that'd be a great move. What do you think, Neal?
Yeah, I think he's definitely gone. They traded for Gortat, I think, as insurance, and with the intention of moving him. Whether it's Dallas or, there was buzz last year about Milwaukee, that he might end up there. I don't know if that is still a possible destination for him or not. But, yeah, I think he's pretty much going to be out of L.A. Do you think that changes his fantasy value if he goes to Dallas?
I think it changes it just slightly. He's obviously not going to be the top number 1 scoring option on that team. But, hey, he's still going to be the main man in the middle. He's going to gobble up every single rebound. He could average like 18 rebounds a game. And then he brings the blocks. He'll still be a double-digit scoring guy. Luka Doncic, amazing playmaker, amazing passer. Dennis Smith Jr., he could get a ton of lobs there as well. So, you know what? I'm kind of talking myself now into saying that his fantasy value not only might not be the same, it might actually improve a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think he's got playmakers around him. So I think his field goal percentage will be solid as always, and he may score some more because of those great passers in the backcourt that will demand a lot of attention as well. So I think he'll get a lot of easy looks at the rim, and then he doesn't let anyone else rebound. So he will just take Dirk and push him out of the way, and he'll grab every rebound. And I think his fantasy value is going to be very strong next year. It's just I hate guys that can't shoot free throws. So if I'm in a rotisserie league, I tend to avoid guys like that. But in a points or a head-to-head league, I think he's going to be very valuable.
Yeah, and I'm with you, Neal. Especially in roto leagues, I don't like to tank any category, so I stay away from guys who kill you at the free throw line. So not normally a guy that I draft. In head-to-head leagues where you're more likely to punt a category, I'm totally cool with it. So DeAndre Jordan, yeah, I think he's going to be great for fantasy. All right, Neal, I think that'll about do it for free agency. I'm really excited to see what's going to happen. And I'm excited to talk to you next so that we can go over whatever goes down. And, yeah, man. All right, so, Neal, we got some questions on
This
Twitter.
is fantastic. We've got our first questions go. Yeah. What do we got?
We've been asking. Okay, so, good friend of the show, Omar, wants to know what our thoughts are on Will Barton and Tyreke Evans for free agency. So, a lot of buzz that teams like, I think, the Magic or the Pacers were interested in Tyreke and Will Barton. Neal, what are your thoughts on that?
So I was just doing some research on that, trying to figure out where these two guys could land. Let's start with Will Barton. He was definitely a solid fantasy player for Denver last year. Came off the bench, but then became a starter once injuries kind of took over that team a bit and really delivered for fantasy. He can do a lot from a wing position. He's great at getting assists and also rebounds and steals and gets to the occasional block. So he really does fill up a lot of different categories. I guess the most obvious choice was that he stays in Denver. I don't know how that's going to work with their salary situations. Other teams that I'm hearing are maybe Arizona or Indiana or Philly. So I'm trying to think how those fits would be. I think if he goes to Indiana, he'll be on the bench again. Air Phoenix. He maybe he's starting. I don't know. It'll be tough. I think he'll be a solid rotation player wherever he goes. I think he'll still get like that mid 20 minutes, and he'll be sort of a low end fantasy guy. And then if there's an injury, he'll jump into the top 100. So if I had to predict where he's going, I don't know. Maybe Indiana might be my best bet.
So the Pacers have been linked to him. They have shown interest in Will Barton. As you mentioned, Will Barton, what an amazing fantasy season he had. 15 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 threes a game, a steal, a stuff and things type of guy. He contributes in so many categories. I was actually fading Will Barton coming into this past season only because the Nuggets were so crowded on the wing with Jamal Murray, Gary Harris, Wilson Chandler coming back, and Will Barton just rose to the top. Just such a quality player. So he's going to have a lot of interest. There's going to be teams that for sure are going to want his services. Now, Neal, I got to ask you, the Pacers I believe Thaddeus Young just opted into his contract. So Thaddeus Young is going to stay in Indiana. Do you think that changes the Pacers' interest in Will Barton?
I don't think so too much in terms of, I don't understand salary situations that well, so I don't know about the cap situation there. But in terms of player situation, I think Young's a little bit bigger, plays a little bit more of the 4. In today's NBA, while Barton is still like a 3 or a 2 player. So in terms of position, so I don't think that'll affect in terms of positional need. As far as salary issues, I'm not sure what Barton's going to demand in terms of where his value is. So maybe that's an issue. But as far as fit, I don't think that'll affect it.
So let's see what happens to Will Barton before we get into what we're doing with him for fantasy. We know he's a great fantasy player because he contributes everywhere, but he's really got to land in the right situation. If he ends up on a team where he gets buried, he's not starting, he's not getting starter minutes, then I'm going to likely be fading Will Barton. But if he lands in a real favorable situation where there's a real need for him, then I'm going to likely target Will Barton. So let's see what happens. Let's get into Tyreke Evans real quick. I don't think he's going to return to the Grizzlies. I really hate how they tried to trade him. They sat him because they didn't want him to get hurt. Tried to trade him, couldn't trade him. And then they benched him for the rest of this end of the season. And I don't think that sat well with Tyreke. He's gone. I don't know where he's going to go. But, you know, I don't know for fantasy, Neal. I had this guy in a lot of leagues this year, and he actually helped me win a few leagues. So I do like Tyreke, but keep in mind, I literally did not pay anything for him on draft day. I picked him up off the wire in most of my leagues. So if I have to draft this guy due to his injury concern, I'm not sure about him. What do you think, Neal?
Yeah, I'm curious to see where he ends up too. I don't think it's going to be Memphis. The two teams I was looking at were either Philadelphia or Portland, from what I'm seeing. So that's just speculation right now. So who knows? But I think if he ends up on either of those teams, he could be a solid role player on both those teams. I think he brings, like Will Barton, he does a lot of different stats. Right? He's a great passer, great facilitator, rebounder, good defensive guy. So hopefully he gets in a system where he can play like the sixth man role if he's not a starter, or plays significant minutes. But he's another guy I'm worried that might get buried if he goes to a team. So we'll see how it plays out.
All right, Neal, one last question for the show. This question comes from VP. He wanted to know, with LeBron likely bolting to the West Coast, who's the favorite, or does the Eastern Conference have any clear MVP candidates if LeBron leaves? What do you think about this, Neal?
Yeah, the only one that jumps out to me is Joel Embiid. If he plays 70 games, he's an MVP candidate. I believe he will be a future MVP if he's healthy, or at least in the conversation. So he's the first guy that jumps out to me, especially if Philadelphia runs away with the East and he's their lead player. I was thinking about Boston. I don't think anyone there is an MVP candidate. Am I missing someone else? Can you think of anyone?
Yes, I can't wait to jump in here because, number one, I didn't even think of Joel Embiid, and I think that's brilliant. That's a great pick. Philly was great this season, and you're right. If Joel Embiid plays every game, and if Philly is at the top of the East, which would not surprise me, Joel Embiid could very likely be an MVP candidate. But Neal, I got a surprise for you. Not only do I have another guy, he's a guy on the team that you just thought that doesn't have a candidate, and that's Kyrie Irving. If Kyrie Irving comes back healthy next season, and the Celtics, I think, would be the favorite to finish number one in the East, and we know that plays a lot into being an MVP candidate, is where your team finishes. If Kyrie is healthy next season, he could go bonkers. Like, we know he's ball dominant. He's the alpha on this team. Brad Stevenson's offense is very friendly to point guards. We've seen Isaiah Thomas have a career year in this offense. So Kyrie Irving can go crazy next year, and it would not surprise me if he's an MVP candidate. What do you think, Neal?
I'm torn. I mean, I definitely don't want to say he can't be. his defense is not so great, and maybe that'll change being in the Boston system. That'll become a better defender. Although Isaiah Thomas never really became a great defender, but then again, he has those size constraints. But maybe you're right. I know he will put up really great fantasy stats. That I'm sure of, and he'll be the lead player on that team. MVP candidate, I guess he'll be in the mix. You're right. If he goes crazy and they win like 70 games or 65 games up there in Boston, he'd definitely be mentioned for sure.
All right, Neal, I think we should wrap this up, put a bow on this show. It's been a good one. Neal, any big plans?
Yeah, I'm about to head off to the airport here in the next hour, so I'm glad we did this just in time show so I could get a little more stress in my life. Hey, speaking of travel, so I heard you talking about going to perhaps Vegas Summer League. So do you have dates yet?
I'm hoping to go out Friday, Saturday, Sunday of the end of Summer League. I want to say off the top of my head that's like the 13, 14, and 15. So, hey, rooms are very inexpensive right now. And Summer League, man, it's like $25 to get into Summer League, and you just sit in the Thomas Mack Center and watch games all day long. I'm seeing some of these rosters for the Summer League. The Mavericks, Dennis Smith Jr., Luka Doncic's on that roster. The Kings have Harry Giles, their rookie Marvin Bagley's going. I'm super pumped for some of these guys that are going to be there. I hear what's also a lot of fun about Summer League is out in the stands, you see a lot of coaches and players hanging out. So, Neal, I'm pretty pumped for Summer League.
Yeah, I'd love to come see you and finally meet you face to face. I will look into that. So you're not going this weekend, or you're not going next weekend. The opening weekend, you're going to wait a week.
Yeah, the opening weekend's just coming up too fast. I just need a little bit more time to prepare. So I'm thinking the next weekend after that. So, yeah, I think that would be awesome. And really looking forward to this weekend, guys. Free agency. Hey, I don't know if any of you guys are soccer fans, but big World Cup game tomorrow with Argentina and France. Really looking forward to that at the beginning of the knockout stages. So a lot going on, Neal. It's an exciting weekend. Neal, you're like all over the place, world traveler, man. You just got back from camping. Now you're off, jumping on another plane.
Oh, crazy. Yes, just jet setting around the rural America. So yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. So, yep. All right,
you guys. Neal, it's been fun. I don't want to keep you too long because I know you got to jump on that plane. We'll see you guys later.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.